From athletes to authors, entertainers to innovators, we connect with those who help shape our culture. Join us in revealing stories of their lives and backgrounds, their triumphs and tragedies that molded them into who they are today. Authentically off-script and personally illuminating, this is Audibles with Jason Scarborough. This week on Audibles, John Fourcade.
So October 11th, 1960, that's where we begin your story, Gretna, Louisiana. So how would you describe growing up there in Louisiana?
Well, growing up in a town outside of New Orleans, it's across the river. We call it the West Bank, but we're on the East Bank of the river. It's strange, but look, you got to live somewhere. You got to grow up somewhere. I grew up with a father who was a police officer, a mother who worked in the oil business for a little while there, and then two sisters and two brothers. So large five-person family for his children. You don't get that much these days. But look, growing up, we were very active. My sisters played sports. My brothers played sports. Unfortunately, my youngest brother was 7 years younger than me, so he didn't have a chance to play with the sisters and the brothers because he was always the baby. But I enjoy growing up in Gretna, Louisiana. I have a place there now that I have a condo there, and I got a house in Marrero, but I'm a West Banker, true and true.
Jefferson Parish, that's where you grew up there. So how would you describe the people growing up there in Jefferson Parish?
You've heard a guy named Mel Ott, professional baseball legend, Hall of Famer. He grew up there. Okay. And so we've had some athletes among regular, everyday people in Gretna. I mean, it's not an overly big city, but it's got its nice-sized police department. People want to be there. You got, the historical district of Old Gretna, and then you have McDonoughville, which is named after John McDonough. So there's a lot of intriguing things about living there. You're real close to the river. Matter of fact, you back up against the river. You're right there by the bridge. So once you cross over the Mississippi River, you're in Gretna. And so everybody kind of knew everybody in Gretna. And it wasn't rough growing up having a father who's a police officer. So people kind of tend to know him. They tend to know who the family is.
So you couldn't get away with anything?
Oh, no.
Not at all, because of your dad being a police officer?
Oh, everybody would tell on you. But look, we had a bunch of, my growing up friends were, sports advocates. We loved it. They all knew who my dad was. They either found us at the playground or found us in my front yard, because we had a big, huge front yard where I lived at. My house was set back, and we had a fenced-in front yard, which was not the fence you see nowadays, the wooden fence. It was, steel fence, and you could see right through it. So it was a nice size. I'd say 40 by 25 yards was the diagram of my front yard. So either at the playground or at my front yard.
So a lot of games after school, I'm thinking.
We used to play the old, tackling man with the football. Well, you had to be careful sometimes because my sisters wanted to play. But it was tackling man with the football, and we played sports in that yard. We'd play cabbage ball. We obviously played, football. But it was funny because my dad would come in there, and we had the neighbors come by, and they would play quarterback, the fathers of the kids, and throws the ball and run around. And that's how it all began.
Where do you think your athleticism comes from? Where do you trace that back to?
My dad. My dad was a professional baseball player. He was drafted with the Detroit Tigers back in the day. With but I want to say Murtaugh was a manager. I don't know if it was for Detroit or Pittsburgh, because he ended up with both teams in the minor leagues. And my dad was one heck of an athlete. Broke records. They still, I think, have records of him back in the baseball days. But I got it from him, and there's no doubt. My mom wasn't an athlete, but her side of the family, her brother was another minor league professional baseball player. So it grew up knowing that we had athletic members in the family. My father, my uncle, like I said, my sisters were really good athletes. Keith was a good athlete. My younger brother became a good athlete. He was a little bit younger than us, but that was it. The Fourcade name back then knew My dad was one heck of a ball player. I had to, like anybody else, you had to archive it to try to see who he is and what it was. And I had something sent to me not too long ago of a picture of a story of them still saying how my father hit, I don't know, 465, something back in those days. But yeah, I got the athletic ability from my dad.
Do you remember how young you were when football started becoming very, very important to you?
It was strange, Jason, when it all started. It was a friend of mine wanted a ride to football practice down the street. And so I said, get on the bicycle, because I used to throw papers back in the day. So he sat in the basket, I rode him there, and that's when it was 8 or 9 years old, probably the time span when it was, that I began to look at it as, do I want to do this? And I was out there watching him, and I remember the coach asking my friend George, who's your buddy over there? And he told me, he goes, you think he wants to play sports? And, you always got to do what? Go back home and ask mom and dad if it was okay. And that's when it began. It was right down the street from where I grew up at the playground. George Schexnayder, God rest his soul, he was the one that got me to go play sports because he wanted a ride to practice, and we lived by each other. And sure enough, I gave him a ride, and that's how it started. They first had me playing defensive line, Jason, and the next thing they realized was, man, this guy's a big boy. We might want to try him on offense. So basically it became John run right, John run left, John run up the middle, John punt the ball. Because when I got on the offense side of the ball, it stuck me at quarterback. And basically you don't throw at that age. But it was run right, run left, because I was a big kid, a little bit bigger than some of the other. And that's where it all started. Mellot, playground.
I could see that, though. I could see you being a defensive end, defensive tackle, kind of your mentality.
Yeah, but I was sure glad they flipped me over to the offense, because I didn't want to keep hitting people. Then again, I got hit, but I was delivering the blow from self-defense wise than me having to be the guy to go get the blow, hit the guy. But it was an experience at the age of 8, 9 years old.
Now, they say in Louisiana there's really only a couple of schools that you're allowed to root for, and one of those, of course, being the Bayou Bengals, the LSU Tigers. Were you an LSU fan growing up?
Growing up, I didn't know the sports world of what college is. You heard of Tulane there, and you obviously heard of LSU. Then you heard of the Notre Dames and the ones who were on TV a lot. In the SEC, you've heard of Bear Bryant, you've heard of. But growing up, I was never really, even people laughed at me when I was growing up. I remember it. The New Orleans Saints, 1967, right? I was an Oakland Raider fan. My brother Keith was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Never knew anything about the Saints. They were losers. you go after winners, the Raiders and the Steelers back in the day. But growing up, I didn't really have a favorite team, Tulane or LSU. It was just, I just wanted to play sports.
I've read and heard by the end of your first day of Little League practice, you were 8 years old. Your coaches recognized your talent, your gift as a quarterback. What do you think distanced you from all the other kids on the team, your Little League team, as a quarterback? What was it about your talent and gift that you think distanced yourself?
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, we did mostly running. Quarterback, it was hard to throw. We wasn't great throws back in the day. He had a couple of little pass plays, but I got that too from my father by playing in the yard, tackling me with the football, because he was throwing all the time. And I was like, man, if that's the star of I want to be that. I want to be the guy to have the ball in my hand and do things. So in the yard is where I learned how to throw a football, because my dad was out there, being an old baseball player, could teach you a little bit about throwing a football. And then when you got to the playground, you didn't really practice much throwing. It was all about the running. And then when we had time to throw, I would practice on it, but I wasn't quite there yet to be a throwing quarterback until you got to high school.
Let's talk about a high school, Archbishop Shaw High School. That's where things really start to pick up for you. And how would you describe John Fourcade as a high school student?
Well, when I left, junior high to go to my high school, went to Catholic high school. We couldn't afford it. My dad's salary, nor my mother's secretarial salary. I was very fortunate. The priest at my junior high school and my father knew each other, and they went to church. He was our priest at the church. He got us a deal at high school. I had a scholarship, and he was grateful. Not knowing I'm gonna go there at 13 years old. Now I'm 13 years old going into my freshman year, and then I become the starting quarterback on a 13-year-old guy going to a varsity team. in my first game, I see guys with beards. I mean, I've seen animals. I've never seen guys that big before playing Little League and playing playground and stuff of that nature. Because when I was in junior high school, I played flag football. Wasn't the junior high tackle football team. So I'm at Shaw High School, 13 years old, and Coach Z says, you're going to be the quarterback of this team. We're not winning. Didn't ever win a record my freshman year, but I was the only kid, 13 years old, to get the opportunity to play.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
We're going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders,
gotta have the ability to get their product to market,
infrastructure stakeholders, and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
Yeah, I'd heard you say that before about being 13 years old and you're out there playing against high school football players and they got beards. And I always wonder, do you feel like being kind of thrown in there as a 13-year-old at quarterback, do you feel like that helped, that hurt? I mean, I know it sounds like a crazy question, but how did you feel about it at the time?
Well, first off, when I said they had beards, I didn't say they had beer bellies now, but some of them looked like they had beer bellies. Look, when I was 13 years old and they gave me the scholarship to go to high school, Archbishop Shaw High School, and I'm like, well, who is this? What school is this? And I remember West Jefferson and East Jefferson, the biggest two rivals over there, public schools. I went to a game there one time. You couldn't even sit in the stands. You had to be underneath the stands. That's all they can come to go to the games. And I'm sitting there going, man, this is pretty intrigued. Now I go to Shaw High School and don't know anything about them. I get a scholarship. I said, okay, the school, education-wise, was one thing. But I didn't know I had to work for the work scholarship. So the summer before I'm going to play in 1974 to turn 14 years old, as it would have been in October. It's the August, and I'm 13. I'm building a baseball stadium with the father or the priest who runs the school. That was part of my work scholarship. Never knew anything about that. My hands are all cut up. Coach Joe Zimmerman, our head coach, saw this one day. He said, man, you can't throw today? I said, no, sir, look on my hands. He went to the priest and said, look, he's here to play football this year, not to build a stadium and building a baseball stadium. So right then and there, I knew something was up for him to take his time, the head coach, and knew that his team probably wasn't going to be very good, which is why I was the only guy. I'm surprised from our class of freshmen to be on the varsity. There was no other freshman kid on the varsity. So I waited my time. I was like checking this out, seeing what's going on. Started getting my reps, and here I am, 13-year-old freshman, and all the seniors and all the older guys, yeah, they didn't want nothing to do with a 13-year-old kid. So gradually, it wasn't winning. We weren't even competitive. So coach says, hey, look, you're going to be it. You're the guy. Like the third game of the season, I'm starting. Homecoming. Thinking to myself, wow. But I think what prepared me was the fact growing up to a police officer's son and playing with all these kids that I played with. So when I got there, because we had won some championships in our flag football team in junior high school, I won some playground championships. A lot of those kids that I played with, we had about 20-something of us all go to Shaw as freshmen. I was the only one that got to play in the varsity team, took my lickings. We didn't win a game, but we were very competitive because they let me play quarterback. I did some things differently than the other quarterbacks. But all my guys that went to school with me were playing freshman football. They won the freshman championship as a freshman. They were playing some junior varsity. They won that. So we had a core of kids that were going to be good. Just had to get through that freshman year. But I was just amazed at 13 because I didn't know it at the fact. I didn't know 13 and playing with. That didn't enter your mind. You just wanted to play, and it went well.
Your junior season, you talk about that freshman season, things didn't go so well. Sophomore season, you guys finished 9-1. Do I have that right?
No, we were 8-3, okay. 8-3, and then my junior year we ended up 9-1, and then obviously my senior year we were 10-2. Lost to Bobby Hebert's team, and
you're still sour about that.
Yeah, because we had a big lead. We had a good team back then. My sophomore year, we should have been in the playoffs. They only took 2 teams. And it's not like it is now. They take all 32 teams. Basically, you play the season and everybody goes in. But back then, it was only 2 teams from our district went. We were tied for the district championship, but for some reason we lost with it. You know how that roundabout goes. My junior year we were really, really good. And the only loss I had when I broke my foot on the third play of the game. In a playoff game against Covington, who eventually won the state championship. My junior year, that team was really good. We should have been the state champ. Well, my senior year, we knew we had a good team. Everybody was coming back. We had a dominating team. We go play at South Lafourche, a home team. They wasn't nowhere near us, but look, they won the game. We didn't win the game. We had golden opportunities, and it came down to the last play of the game, which should have never been. We were up by 3 scores basically the whole game. We had a couple of onside kicks. They recovered. They end up going down, scored. They take the lead. We go down. I throw the winning touchdown. Game's over. There's a flag. Comes from behind me. How does that guy, the referee, call pass over the line of scrimmage when that's not his call? It's the line judge's call. And field judge, line judge, whichever one it was, they didn't call it. It was behind me. So we had to do another play. 4th down and forever. I threw the ball. The guy's wide open again. He goes to catch it, and it looked like a freight train just ran him over because then he got blown up before the ball got there. No penalty. That's how the game ended. Bobby Hebert, my hat goes off to y'all. Y'all win state champion. But 2 years in a row, we probably should have been state champions. Didn't happen. But hey, I had a great time in high school. We had a great time. I played all sports in high school, but it was tough on you after a while. I had to run track. I had to keep my, basketball. It was good while it lasted, but I was more like a football guy playing basketball, running people over. So they said, go stick to something else. But baseball, if you can't hit the curve, you can't play baseball.
Well, you talked about enjoying your time at high school and particularly playing football. You finished All-Metro, 4A MVP. I mean, it's not bad for a kid who started at 13, right? Because to overcome the injuries that you overcame, when you look back at that now and you hear All-Metro, 4A class MVP, I mean, you got to be proud of that.
Well, you win a lot of awards. Look, I won, I was All-American high school. I was state, all-district, all-state MVP. A lot of those, it started from sophomore, junior, senior year. That's a lot. I still have them at the house. That's great to put in the wall thing, but if you don't win the championship, you come in, tied with everybody else. But look, I had an extraordinary high school career, but it wasn't me. We had those guys that came in with me and stuck it out through all the 4 years we were there. We had some dominating teams, and Jason, it was a thrill. I mean, I enjoyed every bit of high school football.
So coming out of high school, you had offers to play in-state at LSU for Coach Charlie McClendon or at Alabama for legendary Coach Bear Bryant. They both told you that you wouldn't start until your junior season. Well, I mean, you're already grinning. I know, we know the story on that. Was there ever a thought, hey, it's only 2 seasons, I can wait, I can stomach that, or that was never even a consideration?
Jason, that was never even a consideration. And first, look, I was recruited by, I wanted to go to Notre Dame. Errol Parsegian retired when I'm about to, finish up, high school football. Didn't work out there. Bear Bryant, I got to meet him, legend, sat on his hat, but we won't talk much about that. That was an accident at the hotel room, but he wasn't at the facilities when I went to visit Alabama when Mal Moore said I wouldn't play until I was a junior. That offset that. And when Bear Bryant called me from Las Vegas, I think he had a couple of cocktails or so, or maybe a glass of wine, and he was cussing, not at me, but he was frustrated with the coach told me. And took it grain of salt, understood what it was. I got back, and then I told the coach, Barry Wilson, who was recruiting me for LSU, I said, please don't tell me I won't play until I'm a junior. That's what Alabama did. Sure enough, Charlie McClendon sat down in the conversation, said, yeah, you probably won't play, John, until you're a junior. Knew right then and there, I'm not going to deal with that. I wanted to play, obviously. You go to college and you want to play. You just leaving. I don't want to go to college and not play football for 2 years. I mean, it's like putting you in prison and letting you out and saying, go play ball. And Ole Miss came, brand new coach, Steve Sloan, got there in December. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see what the situation is. We'll hear them out. Basically told their recruiting quarterback coach who recruited me, David Lee, I said, if you tell me I won't play until I'm a junior, I'm not coming there. And he said, well, how about if we tell you you'll play as a freshman? Can you put that in writing? He said, well, can't do that, but we'll give you at least an opportunity. That's all. That's what I wanted to hear. We'll give you an opportunity to play as a freshman. All they had to tell me was that. When I went to Alabama or LSU, and they could have said, well, we're going to redshirt you. Then I can't do anything about it. Once I'm there, they can redshirt me. I couldn't do anything but leave. Ole Miss said, hey, we'll give you an opportunity to play as a freshman, which they did. I went in with, I think, 7 or 9 other quarterbacks and got an opportunity, worked my way up the ladder. And, it took a while, middle of the season. I started playing against Georgia, at Georgia, and got my chance to play.
I've read and I've heard that the offense that Coach Sloan was running at Ole Miss, when you decided to come to Ole Miss, it was practically identical to what you ran at Archbishop Shaw. So you're running the same offense at Ole Miss that you ran in high school. So easy transition, right?
It was such easy transition. I could say 12 veer, 14 veer, 16 veer. I knew all that 38 counter option. I mean, you just knew, well, wow, that's easy. Because I ran the same offense in high school that we ran in at Shaw, at Ole Miss, because one of our high school coaches, offensive coordinator, went to visit Texas Tech my senior year, so we kind of ran a little bit of Texas Tech's offense at high school at Shaw. Steve Sloan left Texas Tech, went to Ole Miss, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's easy for me. Now, not saying I couldn't have gone run wishbone at Alabama, which I wasn't a wishbone guy. It's a little bit differently than the veer. And then LSU had a little bit variety of different flavors of their veer. They ran more of the I-back veer. We ran a split-back veer. It was all the same, basically. And it was easy to adapt to that. When I went there, I went, this is going to be a lot easier than me learning a whole different verbal command, offensive philosophy. So it paid a lot. And plus, a new head coach, new coaches versus older coaches that already been established, and they got players already been there. And nothing against David Woodley or Steve Emsminger from LSU. I watched them play. They did fantastic. I just didn't want to follow behind them. Alabama had Stedman Shealy, which I knew he was going to be leaving and looking forward to getting a shot. But it worked out well. I went to Ole Miss, got a 4-year ride.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
I'm Horn.
And I'm CPA. This is Jane.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Jane is looking for a CPA to help with compliance.
Nice. The CPA is great with compliance. Good to hear.
All right, Jane, shoot.
I'm looking for some mergers and acquisition advice.
Well, I can review forms and dot I's and cross T's, but other than that,
Yes, we do more than advise on mergers and acquisitions. We bring in buyers, help you find capital, put the whole deal together.
Really?
We also offer wealth strategy collaboration, if that'd be helpful.
It would.
And if you're in the market to buy, we offer organization development, training, and coaching services.
Great to know.
When you're done with CPA, let me know. We can chat.
She seems nice.
yeah, she's great. Now about those I's and T's.
I'm sorry, 1 second. Do you also dot I's and cross T's?
Yes.
I'm gonna.
Yep, I would too.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
We hope you're enjoying Audibles with Jason Scarborough. Watch every full, unedited episode via our digital platforms. Download our free Roku TV channel simply by searching for Audibles on your Roku device. Look us up on our YouTube channel too under Spirit Media Network and hit subscribe. And enjoy episodes of Audibles along with our other original content. Bookmark our website at spiritmedianet.com and stay up to date on what's happening on the Spirit Media Network, where we're changing the game.
Coach Steve Sloan has been quoted as saying you had plenty of offense, but just not enough defense, it seemed like. You're kind of chuckling already at that. I've heard him describe it there. Your time at Ole Miss is that way. And your time at Ole Miss, I'm going to read this to you. 6,713 career yards, surpassing Archie Manning at the time, a mark that stood until his youngest son, Eli, overtook the record books at Ole Miss. You didn't win the games that you probably, the number of games that you probably wanted to at Ole Miss, but what does it mean to still be mentioned to this day as one of the greats to ever take the snap at Ole Miss?
Look, following guys, Norris Weiss, I know him back from Louisiana. Archie Manning. Before that, Tim Ellis was a quarterback I knew a little bit about. I remember seeing Tim play in Southern Mississippi, and that was one of the reasons I like the Ole Miss, like the colors of the jersey. You go back and back and back and look at all the quarterbacks that were at Ole Miss, and look, I was honored to break Archie's record, and I know a lot of it's more running than throwing because we didn't throw a lot like back then, but we threw some. And granted, records are going to be made to be broken. We all know that. As time goes on, offenses change. Look, we could score points and we can move the football when I was at Ole Miss. Our defense was the same way. They let the other teams score points and move the football against them very well. Those guys played hard. They fought hard. We just couldn't stop many people. We had a good offense. Defense wasn't there for us. But look, those guys I played with were fantastic. They tried everything. I was at Ole Miss, didn't change one offensive coaching staff. We changed about 14 or 15 on the defensive side of football. And somehow we never got the continuity of getting the same coaches. It was like a revolving door. I enjoyed my time there, enjoyed my coaches there. Could have things have been differently? Yes. Could we have done some things offensively that might have helped us? Yes. Could we have done a lot more things defensively to help? Yes. But there was games we were in. We had opportunities. We didn't have the depth as other schools had. We had Alabama on the ropes here in Jackson. But overall, you got to look at it like this. There was a lot of good college football being played in the SEC. We were just one of a few. But being at Ole Miss, following Archie, they had other guys that came behind me, other quarterbacks. I can go on and on talk about them. You're always going to have quarterbacks nowadays in the SEC that's going to break records. But look, Eli, my hat's up, but he left me one record. I want to thank Eli for leaving me one. I still got the most interceptions in one season.
I wasn't going to bring that one up.
Yeah, you got to have a record, and I might as well have one, and that's the one I got.
I still want the helmets. If Keith Carter's watching, I still want the helmets you wore.
Those were the sweet Ole Miss helmets back then.
Yes, sir.
I'm not into the powdered blue. I won't be. I don't believe it. I've never been a powdered blue guy until today. I like the red. We always got voted the nicest in the top uniforms. You know, the gray slacks with the blue and red stripe down the side. The blue jersey with the white numbers. The white jerseys with the red and blue numbers. The red jersey with the white. So we had a combination of different jerseys that we used to wear, and we wore the old tearaways. Man, I had my linemen out there with my jerseys and the running backs' jerseys stuck in their back of their pants, because if we tore a jersey in the middle of the field, we had to hurry up and change it right then instead of coming off. We had the tearaways, original tearaways, and you don't see that happening anymore.
And not a fan of the powder blue. How about that?
Not a fan of the powder blue. Don't like the powder blue helmets. Don't like the jersey. Hey, I'm being honest. Hey, I'm not. I'm old school. Old school.
Your final play as an Ole Miss Rebel is one of my all-time favorite college football highlights, and it happened not too far from where we are. We're here at, of course, Jesse Mitchell's beautiful law office here in Madison County. So we're not far from Veterans Stadium from where this play happened for you. You scored the game-winning touchdown in the final moments on a quarterback keeper against Mississippi State. If you could write it any better, you couldn't write it any better than that. How often do you think about that moment?
Well, first of all, you said that it's like your all-time favorite play to watch. Mississippi State fans say that's their all-time favorite as well.
Right. Yeah.
They still fight me on that about that play, about pass interference. Like, hey, you know what happens, and it happened.
It was a makeup call from the Bobby Hebert game.
Yeah, thank you, Mississippi State and that official. You know, he's still getting payroll checks from me on that. Look, it ended. It's an unbelievable ending for anybody's college career, high school career, or even pro career. In this situation, my last game, Mississippi State, we're the visiting team playing in a Veterans Stadium here in Jackson. You couldn't have asked for a better ending. But I'll say this much. Coach Ballard, the coach for Mississippi State, decides to kick a field goal on third down. And I'm thinking 30-something seconds left, he's kicking a field goal. And I'm like, well, why would he kick a field goal on third down? Well, they did. A lot of these coaches kind of over-coach by thinking, well, if something goes wrong, we can kick it again. If, like bobble, snap, you fall on the ball, kick it again. But they kicked it on third down. They left us, under 30 seconds. They kicked off. We threw a couple of passes to Ken Toller. We get down, we throw a pass to Michael Harmon in the end zone, pass interference. We line up at the 1 yard line. Actually, the point where we line up at the 2 yard line. Pass interference in the end zone went to, let me rephrase that, the 1 yard line. They got frustrated. They kicked the football. They got another penalty. Nobody knows that. They moved it to the half-yard line. And the play that we run was called 38 goal line option. I still can remember that, 38 goal line option. That means I have the option spin around to run it in or pitch it. We lined up in the wrong formation. We're supposed to have two tight ends. We had one tight end, which was on the right. The backside tight end was out, flexed out. I'm thinking, I got to run the play. We have no more timeouts. You can't stop it. So I ran the play, I spun around. The backside defensive end was chasing me. And if he stayed on me, he might have got me, but he went for the fullback, Hammerhead Thomas, who jumped over the line. He went to tackle him. I walked around the end. It was either pitch it to Buford McGee or me walk in, and I'm at the 1 yard line. I ain't pitching nothing. I'm going down. There's going to be short 1 yard. I'm going to score the touchdown. We ended up scoring it. We took the lead, kicked the extra point. But on that play, when it was over with, said and done, I was running down the middle of the field. And my guys came off the field, and they just off the bench and mobbed me. One player just happened to be running in front of the Mississippi State Bulldogs bench. He was doing a high leg kick, giving him, we're number one, with the wrong finger, if you know what I'm saying. I had to endure that for all these years, people saying it was me doing it, running up and down the field in front of Mississippi State people, saluting them as, yeah, you're number one, which it wasn't me. It was another player. I won't mention Tony Dalton's name. And Tony was funny. I couldn't believe he did it. And they showed it on replay, and the eye in the sky doesn't lie. It was Tony running in front of the bench, not John Fourcade. I'm getting mobbed on the field. But the people of Mississippi State still want to say it's me. Tony was telling them they were number one. But, that's how my career ended. It was funny, but that's how it ended. On the last play of the game, beating Mississippi State. Couldn't ask for a better day to end my career.
Mississippi State fans aren't going to like this next question.
All right.
I had you on our Egg Bowl preview show a couple years ago. We did that by phone. And I purposely said, hey, John, you were 2-1 against Mississippi State. You said, no. And you corrected me real quick, and you said, no, I'm 3-1. And I loved how you pointed that out. Knowing how heated the rivalry is now, how often do you get to mention, hey, I was 3-1 against Mississippi State?
And if I don't throw an interception my junior year, we're 4-0. My last chance to get in the end zone in the fourth quarter, I threw a pick in the end zone. Look, 3-1 against your arch rival is phenomenal. You can just look at that. Anybody that's played against their arch rival will know you'd rather be 3-1 than 1-3 or even 2-2. I still see some guys around. I see Johnny Bond every now and then when I'm here in Jackson. I run into a couple of old former guys that played for Mississippi State, and they don't like to hear the 3-1. They surely don't want to hear about the last play of the game, and because I got to hear about pass interference. That's the first words out of their mouth. And my response is, well, don't kick a field goal on third down, and you win the ball game. But look, it's all part of being rivals and college players and having fun. And in my book, look at it like this. It's 4 years excitement. Nobody hates each other. If you're hating a person you play against, you shouldn't be doing it. It's for fun. It's enjoyable. It's competition. Look, we ended up 3-1. I mean, I can sit there and say I was 0-3-1 against LSU. I'm not too thrilled about it, but I'm 3-1 against Mississippi State.
You've always been considered as one of the toughest guys to ever play the game. In the phone conversations we've had, we talk about all the different surgeries we'll get to that in a second, but you break your hand before the season opener your senior year against Tulane. That game is going to be played in the Superdome. And you cut the cast off in your hotel the night before, and you still play. In that game, you sustain a shoulder injury, and then you play all 4 quarters the following week in a win against Memphis. Where does that toughness come from?
Growing up, knowing, the tackle man football in the yard, you got to remember this. Your dad throws you the ball, and you got to run to the other end of the field or the yard. We were playing it through 7, 8, 10 people, and didn't get hurt. It was amazing why I never had any major surgeries or anything back when I played high school. But the toughness came from growing up and just being a son of a major league ball player who was a cop, and having 2 brothers, especially one brother, Keith, that was my age, and 2 sisters I had to deal with. So they would beat my behind too now. Growing up, that was, we were physical people to play. And yes, we'll get into the injuries and the surgeries I've had over the years. I was very fortunate, knock on wood, at Ole Miss, not to have one that keep me from playing. I did cut the cast off the night before we played Tulane because I wanted to play in the game, and they didn't know how long I'd be out. I stood up all night, cut the cast off with a butterknife. I showed up at the Dome, and they're like, what are you doing? I said, I still had the pins in my hand, and they had to figure something out to cover the pins so the officials will let me play to get through that. But it was I got to play. In fourth quarter, I separated my left shoulder, but we beat Tulane, and then the following week, I played with my hands, get the pins out, but now my left shoulder is separated. But you just got to bite the bullet and go play.
Spoken like a true competitor. Hey, we got the win, though. That's all that matters.
All that matters to me is a win's a win.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
We're going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders,
You gotta have the ability to get their product to market.
infrastructure stakeholders, and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
Remember the neighborhood grocery store of your childhood? The place where everyone knew your name, or where they still help you carry your groceries to the car? Well, welcome back to the good old days. Allen's Supermarket delivers that and more. Since 1967, Allen's Market has strived to serve the best meals in the metro. So stop on in. Fill that tank up, whether it's your fridge or your car. We've got you covered. Allen's Supermarket, proud sponsors of Ole Miss baseball's national championship run.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
Spent some time playing in Canada, USFL, before finally getting your shot with your hometown New Orleans Saints in 1987. I've heard you talk about how your tryout came about as well. You wrote a letter to then Saints general manager Jim Finks, is that right?
Correct, and how it all came about, yes. When I left the Ole Miss team back in '82, I wasn't not drafted, very disappointed. A lot of teams called me about coming in as a free agent. The Canadian people called me that had my rights and offered me quite a bit more money than what the NFL was going to offer. So I went to Canada, but I still wanted to get back in the NFL. I had my 2 years up there. I left there. Warner Alford was the athletic director at Ole Miss, and he says, "Listen, John, you got a semester left. I will pay you to come back here." Not pay me, but pay my education, pay my I was on scholarship still. He said, I got your place to live, books, everything. You just come here, you got to graduate. Well, Warner Alford was there when I got there as a freshman in '78. And the man always had my back, and he helped me. So I got here, and I remember the spring of '86, I wrote a letter to Jim Finks saying, "Hey, sir, I will pay you to let me try out." Their offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, recruited me in high school, Carl Smith. He was at Southwest Louisiana, it was called then. And he was with the Saints. And so they got together, and he said, "Okay, we'll give you a workout." And I came down to New Orleans, left Ole Miss that day, drove down. Thank God I lived there. And then I was able to spend a day, go see, went to Saints Tuesday, worked out for them. And Jason, after that, they liked what they saw. I got a call, we didn't have cell phones back then when I was back at Ole Miss. So I got a phone call, and Mr. Finks said, "Hey, we want to sign you." And I was like going nuts, like this is great. It pushed me to get out of there, graduate. But he also said, "Hey, you remember you said you'll play for free if everything worked out?" I said, "Yes, I did." He goes, "Well, legally we can't do that. We got to pay you to come here." And that's how I got started. It was 1986. And then Bobby Hebert, Dave Wilson, and Richard Todd, myself were the four guys at the quarterback. For some reason, it worked out. I outshined the guys. I played better. That's all I kept hearing, this, that. I got cut. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, all this stuff y'all telling me, and y'all keep, well, they went out and got Hebert because of the USFL. I understood that. But Dave Wilson, didn't understand that. And Richard Todd, who was at the end of his career, and so they ended up cutting me, and then Richard Todd got cut. They kept Bobby and Dave Wilson. I was very disappointed. And the following year, '87, was the strike season. And when that hit, they come knocking on my door, the Saints. I told them to shove it where the sun don't shine. Sorry to say it like that. But the Oakland Raiders, I had some personnel people that were with Oakland who were with BC when I was up in Canada. So I'm going in '87, I'm going to strike season to Oakland because I had enough of what all happened with the Saints and I should have been there. So I'm in the airport and Jim Fink shows up. He convinced me because he wasn't the guy making the choices. He was the GM, not the Jim Moore, who was the head coach, who cut me in '86. And Jim Moore said, I'm gonna give you every opportunity, and I promise that you turn around, come here, come play for us, not the Oakland Raiders. We'll give you an opportunity to make this roster in '87, and I'll give you a chance to play, and I'll be in there. And he did. So I turned around, I liked Mr. Finks, and that's how I got to the New Orleans Saints in '87 during the strike season.
You got a chance to come off the bench and lead the Saints to 3 straight victories to end the 1989 season. Beat the Buffalo Bills, when we all know how good they were back then, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Indianapolis Colts. You threw for nearly 300 yards in one of those wins and pretty close to 300 yards in the other 2 wins. How would you describe that feeling in that time in your career? Like you said, after getting cut, having a little bit of resentment, and rightfully so, right? And getting to come back and kind of have that moment as Saints quarterback.
Well, when I got in '87 season was over, in the '88 year, I ended up becoming the backup quarterback. You know, Dave Wilson was gone by then. And in '89, backup quarterback, I was going to play some in the '89 season. It was against Detroit. We had a chance. We had to beat Detroit. I was going to start the game. I had a spasm in the locker room, my back. I don't know what the heck happened. I didn't get a chance to start the game. Bear went in, he started. Then everything felt better. I got in the fourth quarter. We were behind, a little too late. Well, the following week, it was me. '89 season, went to Buffalo, about 0 degrees with snow up to your knees, playing on that field. I had a 300-yard game. We beat them. Kick a field goal. Martin Anderson, the legendary Hall of Famer, kicks it. We win the game 22-19. We knocked them out for winning the division title. Following week's Monday Night Football game, national television. We took it to we won 30-20 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Knocked them from winning their division title as well. The next game, Christmas Eve, snowing in New Orleans, which is amazing. It was snowing like crazy. Christmas Eve, Indianapolis Colts comes to town. We beat them. It was like 41-40. It was 44-40 or 41 to like 10 or whatever. It was a low score for them. We killed them, knocked them totally out of the playoffs. They had to beat us. They're in. We ended up winning those 3 last games. I thought, man, we got a good situation going here. Jason, we start the 1990 season, and it just didn't go well right off the bat because they changed my style of play. And, you know, I was a little frustrated with that, but they didn't have me moving out. They didn't have me, you know, scrambling, doing my things outside the pocket. And look, I was big enough to run and understand the game. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm going to take my chances of, you know, moving the football. But we changed our offense a little bit, and things went down. Then they traded for Steve Walsh, and we gave up a 1, a 2, and a 3 draft pick to Dallas Cowboys. But that doggone Johnson knew what he was doing, Jimmy Johnson. He scammed the Saints into giving up a 1, 2, and a 3 for Steve Walsh, and things just didn't work out then. But look, we were still winning when I was quarterback, and they made the move. I ended up being a backup to Steve for a while until we got to the playoffs in 1990 against the Chicago Bears, and nobody till today can understand how Steve got hurt and when did he get hurt. And I go in, Craig Haywood dropped the pass toward the end of the game, and it would have. I don't know if we would have won the game, but it would have helped us, and we lost that playoff game. That was my last game, and what happens the last play of the game, throw a Hail Mary pass, didn't mean anything, blew out my elbow. That's how I ended my career with the Saints. Amazing, an injury.
So you played and coached quite a bit in the Arena League after your time with the Saints, but as all things do, there came a time where you had to say, all right, you know, I got to hang it up. So what was that moment like for you to say, all right, I'm hanging the cleats up, I'm hanging the whistle up, that this is it, it's time to move on to the next. Football had been such a big part, and it still is a big part of your life, so how difficult was that moment?
Well, I mean, Father Time catches up with everybody.
Right.
And, you know, injuries catch up as well. So when I played the Indoor Arena Football League, I was player-coach, and you know, I couldn't tell you if I liked playing more than I liked coaching because it was all part of it. And then after a while, you know, I turned 42. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I mean, the injuries were mounting up. There's other thing I'd rather do other than the football. So I just strictly did the coaching and, you know, still did GM. For one point, I was GM, head coach, and quarterback. Then I said, the heck with this. I'm just going to be GM and the head coach. And I did that for a while. Won some championships, played for some championships. But it's got to the point where it wasn't like college or NFL. A little more organized, better suited for what I wanted to do. But sometimes you get to the point where, Jason, you're already past chances to get in on a college team, coaching and on an NFL level. So the arena ball was great. I had blast with it, and I got to move on. And then radio came in, and I was able to start doing radio, and I've done that for a long time. Still do it as of today, and did some TV. You know, I got that face for radio, they say, and I was like, well, I don't have a face for TV, but it was fun, and I still do it, enjoy it, but football's not out of me, and that's an aspect of it. I'm still involved with football, but it's a different form of it now. I have a nephew who's embarking on his professional career as we're sitting here talking, and but it's hard to give up. It's really hard to walk away. You think, man, I can still play this at 40, 42, but I'm like, no, you can't. You know, you got to give it away. You got to get away, step away, give it up, and then like we had talked a long time about this. The injuries play a big part in everything. You know, I've had 28 surgeries over my career of living, and it didn't start till I left the Saints. I had some surgeries while I was with the New Orleans Saints, but not quite as many. I probably had 4 when I was the Saints, so you figured 22, 24 other surgeries came way after that. I had a couple college, but yeah, they mount up. I mean, you know, knees, both knees, you know, elbows, shoulders, neck, back, you know, that adds up to 28 if you add the ones that 5 on each knee, you know, total knee replacement. Now I found out I got to go hit both shoulders redone, a rotator cuff, so it all adds up, you know. Arthritis is getting to me too, and I'm 61. I'll be 62 in October. And it's adding up. You don't move around as much. My golf game used to be 5 days a week. Now it's 3, if I can get 3 in. But Tom's catching up with you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about being on this side now. You love radio, and you love the analysis part of it, because I know that when we're just having a phone conversation, just in general, you know, I can ask one question about a football team, and you go right into analysis mode. It's kind of cool to hear that side of it now. And your radio show has blown up there in New Orleans. So how fun is it to be on that side now and to enjoy the success that you're now enjoying on that side of it? For
a while, Jason, you've been in radio. You know, when you got to get the right combination, the right stations, and I went from a couple of different stations, local stations. Just having my own show, having another friend of mine put together a show, do that, you know, used to be in the red zone. And then things just, you're not getting the airtime far as the right proper times to get on air. You know, you always know the morning drive or the evening drive is what you want. Times have changed a little bit now with all the streaming and other stuff and the podcast. But I finally got with ESPN. And it took a long time, and it's been about 5 years, 6 years now. I've been with them before. I was with, you know, independent stations and stuff, but I got a good partner, Gus Kattengell. It's so good to be able to say I'm with ESPN Radio. And they, well, the big one, no, not the one in Connecticut, the local stations. And but we do have the New Orleans Pelicans basketball games that we broadcast. We do some Saints stuff. We just not WWL radio. It's ESPN radio. But we got a 3-hour talk show, you know, noon to 3. It's a lot of fun. I get good time away when I want to, and I can kind of, you know, take some time off, do some things. But I mean, what more could you ask for? Sit behind the radio and talk things you love, sports. Granted, I gotta get a little bit into the basketball part, or we don't do much hockey. But we talk a lot about Tulane, LSU, and college football and baseball and basketball around town. So it keeps me busy, and I love it. I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders.
You gotta have the ability to get their product to market.
Infrastructure stakeholders and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
So in 2018, you're inducted into the All-State Sugar Bowl's Greater New Orleans Sports Hall of Fame. The first thing we need to do is shorten that name, right?
Great.
Knowing what the Sugar Bowl means to so many football fans in the South, knowing what New Orleans Saints football means to so many along the Gulf Coast, what does that honor mean to you?
Well, if you go look at the list of the players and the males, the females, whoever they are, that were able to be inducted, I'm honored to be in that category. And look, people think there's some other ordeals I should be enshrined or honored into. Look, I'm thrilled somebody calls me, you're honored into this. I'm not going to turn it down. Yes, sir. No, yes, ma'am. Let's go into it. But it's a thrill, the fact that it's you're recognized in the New Orleans metropolitan area, and it basically you're recognized throughout the state. But it is the Sugar Bowl. People that recognize this, and I got the opportunity to play in a city that, the New Orleans metropolitan area. So that's how the people know me. I got to go to college at Ole Miss, but I also played against Tulane and LSU. People get to know me, get to still know me. I'm around town. I'm in radio, TV. I still live there. I never left there. I do a lot of charity things in the area. So they all know that I'm a New Orleans local guy, and it's an honor to be able to say I'm a Hall of Famer in the city of New Orleans.
Now, you were also earlier this year inducted into the Archbishop Shaw Hall of Fame. I know that's one that you're really, really proud of. Your coaches, former teammates, they credit you with putting Archbishop Shaw football on the map there in Louisiana. So I know what the honor being in the Sugar Bowl Hall of Fame means to you. Knowing that your coaches and teammates said that about you, in terms of Archbishop Shaw, putting them on the map in Louisiana in terms of football. What does that mean to hear that, and what does that honor mean to you?
I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. When it first came about, when Shaw finally said they're going to do a Hall of Fame, and I've heard this before, everybody, Joe Zimmerman is obviously going to be the first guy. He's the head coach. And everybody that I spoke to was talking about, the first athlete, they said, should be you. The only guy that had his jersey retired, helped put the school. It wasn't me that did it all. Trust me. Those 20-something players that came from my grammar school and junior high, we all went there. They should all be recognized, and that was in my speech. They all should be in the Hall of Fame. This school would never have been there if it wasn't for these guys. I was part of it. I agree with that. I was one of the guys. But I was also disappointed when the first Hall of Fame came out and I didn't get it. I wasn't in it. It's disappointing for somebody knowing that. Maybe I'll be one of year 2. I didn't even get in it year 2. So then people now there was some grumbling. People started talking. Not me. I kept my mouth quiet. There was other people who were grumbling about it. And then they were like, well, he's not going to accept it now. Because I've heard him come to me about it. But listen, it's water under the bridge. I've had some new people come there that are now running the school that came to me. They apologized for the circumstances. They thought I should have gone in the first year. Look, I'm in it. I'm not Terrell Owens. I'm not going to make a big deal of it. I got in. I'm in the Hall of Fame, my high school. But I want to see the other players get. I want to see my brother. I want to see a Randy Canton, Sidney Goodrose. I want to see a ton of other players. Names I mentioned, just a few of the other guys, Paul Davis, that deserve to be in that Hall of Fame with me. If it's the team, the first team to ever win in season, they should be in there. So, but it's a thrill and an honor. I mean, it's Shaw High School, the only Catholic high school on the West Bank where I grew up at. So, go back and look at what we did, not John, but what we did. I was part of it. We had some players. We had, my junior year, 7 or 8 guys go to major college football, and about 7 of them, I think, went my senior year. So in 2 years, we had 15, 16 guys sign scholarships. So it just goes to show the caliber of players we had there. I want to see more guys get in to the Hall of Fame. But it's an honor to be a high school Hall of Famer. I never even knew they had that back then, but I'm thrilled and honored to be in it.
Being an Ole Miss Rebel and a former Ole Miss Rebel quarterback, I'm curious because you see, just in your toughness, when you see some of these guys roll through, Eli Manning, Bo Wallace, Chad Kelly, Matt Corral, I mean, tough guys in their own right.
They are.
Do you see anybody that reminds you maybe a little bit of John Fourcade?
Well, the Chad Kelly, I saw it first. Eli wasn't running to the water fountain. Eli didn't need to run. He's such a good thrower. But definitely, Bo Wallace was a little bit, but the Chad Kelly was more, not the off the field stuff now. I'm talking about on the football field. Matt Corral's a little bit like it as well. He's not afraid to run. And I thought I threw the ball a little better than Matt, but there's a couple of guys. You can always pick a different player here and there, but styles of play, and people always say this, John, boy, if you played at Ole Miss with the style of play and the offense they use nowadays, you'd break yeah, because I could run and throw back then. Put me in a shotgun and let me decide if I'm going to run and throw. That's an easy thing to do. I'm going to be able to do some things in this offense compared to what they didn't do back running the split back veer. I mean, I would love to throw 30, 40 times a game. I'm happy back day if I was throwing 12 or 15 times because, Wishbone throwing 4 or 5. But times have changed. We understand that. Quarterbacks change. They're all different in a way. But those two guys, I would have to say, Chad Kelly and Matt Corral, are sort of my style of play. Aren't afraid to run and can throw the football.
What kind of career do you see Matt Corral having? There's a lot of conversation about that. It depends on what side you sit on, I guess. How do you see his career turning out?
I think this about Matt Corral. I've watched the kid play here at Ole Miss, and I'm going to say this about the best thing that could ever happen to him is getting with a system where you got to learn for 2 years. There's nothing in the NFL. Because look, let me tell you, on that rookie year, you're guaranteed 4 years. Unless they cut you before that, you're guaranteed a certain pay. You're making good money. Backup quarterback. I'm naming a guy right now, Chase Daniels, 15 years in the league, $41 million net that he's made for a backup quarterback. Not saying the kid's going to be a backup, but there's nothing wrong spending a couple years behind Baker Mayfield if that's the situation. But you got to learn a little bit. You're throwing a guy into the fire nowadays, it just doesn't work. I believe, unless you're a Lawrence, the guy from Jacksonville, or a certain quarterback, Fields in Chicago, a little bit different. A little bit style of play is different. Matt Corral can learn. About 2 years from now, if the kid learns and understands, I can see him playing a few years in the NFL. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong if he's a backup kid. Stay in the NFL 10, 12 years. Bobby Scott backed up Archie Manning. Got a nice paycheck for 12 years.
If you were still playing, game is on the line, there's only seconds left on the clock. What play is John Fourcade calling?
Is John Fourcade in this play, or is John Fourcade the guy who calls it?
Either one. That's a great one. Okay.
I'm gonna go to 4 wide outs, shotgun, and if it's man to man, worst come to worst, I might take off with that football because I'll let one linebacker take on me any day of the week. My guys are blocked up. It's me one-on-one. But get 4 wide, spread the field, get in the shotgun, quarterback draw if you want to call it. But if not, I'll go a pass play. Let me get the best receiver I got one-on-one. But I like the football in my hand. I'm not afraid to run it. So if it's a play, spread it out, let John run the football.
Ole Miss athletics, kind of a crazy question to ask after they win the national championship in baseball, but trending up, continuing to trend up. What is your view of Ole Miss athletics as it stands?
There's no doubt it's trending up. Look at the coach who's coaching football, Lane Kiffin, for how many years he wants to be here. We don't know if they're going to win 10, 12 games a year, but if they're winning over 9 games, keep this guy. I mean, he's that good enough. The basketball program, Kermit Davis is going to get him. He's up and down, but he's a good coach, and they're going to get some players in there. Baseball speaks for itself now. It took that long for them to get through that. I kept thinking 4, 5, 6 years ago they were going to get a couple of championships, but it's getting right. It's getting better. The women's softball team came from nowhere. The basketball program, they got to get it rolling. They'll get some things there. This program, all athletic programs at Ole Miss are on the rise. The university's changed. There's things I can't even see. The only thing they got to do, They got a speed limit for Archie at 18 miles per hour. They got one for Eli for 10 miles an hour. Where is the 1 miles per hour for John Fourcade? I got to have one street that you can drive down for 1 mile an hour.
We're going to work on that. Keith, if you're watching, we got to get that done. Final question for you. You've got a lot of experience with this next question. What advice do you give a 13-year-old about to start his first varsity game? There's not many 13-year-olds that do that, but if there is one, or any kid about to start his first varsity game, what would your advice be?
Well, one advice would be is don't you care what happens. For example, I mean is you're the guy they're going with, they understand you're 13, you're young. Don't worry, you're going to make mistakes. All you can do is practice, practice, practice. The more practice you do, the better off a young kid's going to be. Get with the right crew of people. Let me tell you what, nowadays 13-year-old kids get pulled in different directions. They didn't do that back when I played. I had my 3 or 4 kids that were my age, and we all knew we were on the same path. We playing sports. We staying out of trouble. 13-year-olds nowadays, there's a lot more going on with the social media and things of that nature. Stay away from all that. Do you want to be an athlete? Practice, 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 and stay with the right group of people. And yes, sir, no, sir, every day. Do not think you're old enough that you can't say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But I'll tell you this, the last thing I'm going to say is, if you're a 13-year-old kid and you got the golden opportunity to be a varsity quarterback, you take it and you ride with it and you thrive with it and you do your thing.
And that's exactly what you did your entire career at Ole Miss, coaching and then on into, or playing and then on into coaching. Thank you for doing this. This has been a bucket list of mine for a long time to sit down with John Fourcade for Audibles, and I appreciate you doing this.
Anytime, Jason. When you say the bucket list, sometimes you say the bucket list is toward the end of your lifetime, but it's a revised bucket list. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me here, Jason, and go hotty toddy.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another episode of Audibles with Jason Scarborough.